Hey everyone, welcome to our CLC Leadership Podcast. I'm Pastor Kevin, our executive pastor here at Christian Life Center. I'm so grateful to be a part of this journey with you. As you know, we've been hosting different people on the set. Every week we have Pastor Tom. Pastor Tom, thank you for being with us.
It's great to be here.
Again, we've changed it up just a little bit where we actually ask you all the questions. Gives us the opportunity to glean wisdom and the experience that you've had throughout the years. And Pastor Tom, we're just grateful to be on the team with you. We changed up even the scenery a little bit. Now you're to my left. But it's been great. Pastor, what have you been enjoying so far just on this journey with us together?
Well, that's great, Kev. I love that we've got several from the team that are interacting and just being able to interface with the books that we're reading as leaders and volunteers within the church, and that we're growing, that we're all growing together, and we're intentionally just trying to be better, more effective at what God's called us to do.
Absolutely. I still remember, Pastor Tom, all the different roles that we've allowed for me to serve here at Christian Life Center. I remember the day that I said yes. I don't know what I said yes to that day, but becoming the young adults pastor, and you sent me that long email of all the scoreboard and all the different lanes. I said, oh man, I said yes too soon. but thank you, Pastor, for just continuing to pour into us as staff as well. On that note, we have Pastor Christian with us as our guest today. Pastor Christian, why don't you greet everybody?
Hey, everybody. So glad to be with all of you. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to be a part of this today.
A lot of people don't know. How long you been at CLC?
Oh, wow. So I've been at CLC since about 8-9 years old. So it's going on 31 years. I'm turning 40 this year. This
is my goodness.
And I've been on the team about 18 years now. So I've had a great opportunity to grow up in this environment, be discipled in this environment, and then have the opportunity to serve alongside some amazing leaders and pastors like Pastor Tom and Pastor Max, and be able to do what God has called me to in that way. So it's been great to just be a part of what God is doing here at CLC.
Absolutely. One of the things I love about you is just your willingness to always say yes.
Very much like you. You wonder, well, what did I say yes to? Right?
But now with doing youth ministry, you worked on the communications team for years. You've done Next Gen. You've done discipleships. Now you're doing weekend experience. And it's just great to see just all that God's allowing for you to do here at the church. And I'm grateful to serve and work with you as well.
Amen. Same.
So listen, everyone, this is why we've done this. We want to make it completely organic so that you can connect with us behind the scenes, get personal stories, as well as the different points that we are going to be unpacking together. Again, our hearts and prayers that you are uplifted, inspired, and equipped. Today, we have an interesting topic. I'm excited about it. It's called Mastering the Art of Connections. Now, this has to do with communication off of John Maxwell's book. His book is entitled, Everyone Communicates, but Few Connects. Sometimes just because you're talking to people doesn't mean that you're connecting with them. But again, as our volunteers and leaders, you do this very well. So hopefully this is just another encouragement of what you already do and can add it to your tool belt as you continue to be effective volunteers here at CLC. Now, I have a quote for you, Pastor Christian. It says, people may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. They hear your words, but they feel your attitude. We have a saying around here where we say, fix your face.
Yeah.
You might be saying something encouraging, but your face is frowning, right? But my first point here is your attitude reveals your authenticity. Once again, your attitude reveals your authenticity. My question here, Pastor Christian, is why do you think it's important for our attitudes to align with the words that we're actually speaking?
That's a great question. I think it's one of those important things we can't lose sight of, because it will show consistency and authenticity for us, which leads to a greater impact when we're trying to communicate with other people. If your attitude and words are not aligned at all, you will lose credibility with others. This reminds me of a story that I heard a while back, and I wrote it down so I don't mess it up. And it talks about you at lunchtime, right? So imagine you're walking into a diner, hoping to enjoy a nice lunch. It's noon and you're hungry. You notice, however, there are plenty of parking spots at this diner. There are lots of empty tables and booths when you walk in, and several waiters are just available to take care of you as you sit down. So immediately, you begin wondering, why aren't there more people here? It's lunchtime. Where are the customers, right? So suddenly, everything becomes clear to you. You notice the chef behind the counter. He stands out because he is visibly thin, incredibly skinny, almost really frail. He's so skinny, it appears that like he hasn't eaten in weeks. In fact, you wonder if he's got maybe an eating disorder. Since you're the only customer in the diner, you decide to ask him a question. How can you be a cook and still remain so thin? The chef replies, oh, it's easy. I've never eaten anything I cook. I just serve it to the customers. So all at once, you begin to have second thoughts about eating lunch in this diner, right? Why would anyone eat food prepared by someone else who has never eaten it themselves? So think about that. Why would you purchase a car from a car salesman who hasn't even driven a car? Why would you take piano lessons from a teacher who has never played piano? It just doesn't make sense. There's no credibility there. In fact, this kind of chef that's in this story, or this car dealer, or this piano teacher may just qualify as a hypocrite. So all talk, no walk. Their words don't match their life. So we should choose to build credibility and trust with others through honesty, integrity, and consistency, which only happens when we align our words with our attitude. If we're going to say we're about something and we don't show that we're about it, then we're going to lose credibility in the eyes of others. We'll lose that impact. And it only happens through consistency. And as you're consistent with what you say and what you do, where your heart posture is, where the motives are at on the inside of you, lining that all up together, then over time, that consistency shows itself to be authentic to others. Because nobody wants to follow a person that's inauthentic, right? Nobody wants to follow a hypocrite. Nobody wants to follow somebody that says one thing but then does another. That's one thing I learned pretty quickly as a parent, is that if you're going to teach your child something, if you're going to communicate something to your child, you need to make sure that your life is exuding that as well. We can't say that, we're going to read God's word in devotion together as a family every single night before we go to bed, but they don't see you pray. They don't see you read your word. They don't see your attitudes and the posture of your life lining up with what you're trying to show and teach in that way. So it's vitally important in that way that we align our words with our attitude and our walk of life.
That's amazing. One of the things I love about our volunteers, whether you're at whatever campus that you go to, I remember going to the Coral Springs campus, and the red carpet team, which is our ushers and greeters, they were trying to recruit me. They're like, hey, have you signed up for ministry? I was like, what? I mean, but one of the things that I love about our volunteers, to your point, Pastor Christian, is you are always showing up and making sure you're making those connections, making sure that you're not only just saying that you're going to join and serve in ministry, but you show up every single week and you're greeting people and making those meaningful connections. So I just want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for just continuing to be consistent, letting your yes be yes, as Pastor Christian is saying, to ensure that that which you are committing to is lining up with what you show up to do. Pastor Tom, there's another quote in that John Maxwell book. He says, tone, inflection, timing, volume, pacing, everything you do with your voice communicates something and has the potential to help you connect or disconnect from others when you speak. Listen to this point. This point is here. Your voice and platform, it must inspire meaningful connection. So my question is for you, Pastor, especially just being someone who has spoken in different countries and different states, different age groups. I think you even worked in kids ministry at one point, right?
Yeah.
People don't know that.
There.
People don't know that.
Started there.
I remember the stories. This is all off script right now. The stories of you telling us about I think what was it called, a ventriloquist or something like that, like the puppets and
that's
doing.
How we used to do Bible devotions with the kids at night. Yeah, man.
And y'all did that because that's how the kids had to understand. So my question, Pastor, is how can we adapt our communication style to different audiences or settings while maintaining authenticity?
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good, question for all communicators. And of course, we have a lot of teachers and life group leaders, different ones that are sharing and teaching in different environments. But, basic communication, leads us back to, we got to understand our audience. Just the other day, I was responding just yesterday to an invitation. And, I was writing the organizer to say, okay, help me understand exactly how I can serve you. What is it that you're needing? And when we understand our audience, that's going to change how we communicate. We're not just being spoken to, but it's it's almost an entering in with with the audience that you're speaking to. So you begin to understand that audience, and and then for me, if I'm sharing a Bible lesson or a sermon or something, it's just trying to make sure, and this is real important for me. You guys know, as preachers, in our pulpit, that we're practical. We call it life applicational. That means that whatever the biblical truths are, we can apply it to our life. That whomever we're sharing, teaching with, kids to youth to young adults, that we're not just giving them history, we're not just giving them Greek words, we're not just giving them, expository or deep study. All of that will come in to our teaching, and it should. But at the end of the day, are they living it? Are they doing it? Are they applying it? The audience, the ones that we're sharing with. So it just really does require us to work hard to make sure that we're clear. For me, it comes back to that outline so many times, and I've taken young preachers and taken their outline and said, okay, hey, let's now collapse this down, kind of like an arrow on your, computer that opens everything up. Let's collapse it back down and see, do these main points connect with your title? And half the time, more than half the time, it doesn't. It doesn't connect to the title. And so what are we trying to say? And then the points of that lesson have got to lead back to, what are we trying to talk about? What's the, we say, what's the action? What's the deliverable is the communications term that we use around here. So why is being in a, ministry important? Well, now those points are going to help us to answer that, that question. For me, in preparation, that's the hardest part, is trying to make sure I understand the messaging of what am I trying to communicate to the audience, so that I'm connecting with, that audience. And then there's lots of things, we're not going to violate our own values or our own beliefs or convictions, and yet we can't turn our convictions into biblical truth, because sometimes our convictions aren't fully clear biblically, and therefore different cultures or different ones may not share the same conviction of watching a certain movie or going to a certain place. And that's where it turns legalistic, and we've got to be careful not to bring our cultural backgrounds or preferences or upbringings or traditions. And in a multicultural congregation, that's really hard, because we're all raised with traditional rules. I was trying to avoid the word, but right, rules and regulations. And if you're a good believer, you do this and you don't do that. And yet when you look in Scripture, it's maybe not that clear. Now, the end of the road might be that, but not where it usually started, in my family or in my upbringing or things like that. And so, as we're talking about this inspiring communication, this audience, knowing who our audience is, this is why we write, by the way, the majority of our own curriculum, right, is because we're a multicultural environment. We're in South Florida, and therefore it's multi-ethnic. It's not just different race or colors that are coming together, but we have different ethnic groups that are coming together. So it could be Europeans who all might be olive skin, but Poland is different than Romania, and is different than Austria and Germany, or different Caribbean countries and Asian countries. So we write a lot of our curriculum because we're multicultural, but also, because of our values and our convictions, and wanting to make sure that we're helping our people to really embrace the word in a very practical way, that they can live it out. So not sure if I answered it, but I think if I had to put it in a nutshell, what we're communicating has to move the faith of our listeners. We got to put wheels on their faith. They got to walk it out, live it out, apply it in their life, and not just be hearers. We know that word then, but we do it, we activate it within our heart.
And then when you were in Vienna, I mean, you had how many how many groups were over in
Yeah,
Vienna?
so we had 9 different ethnic groups, and there was 8 different language services. So that's a great example, right? So 9 different ethnic groups, 8 different language services. So that meant we had 2 services in English. But just because we speak English doesn't mean culturally or ethnically we have the same traditions or values and worship styles and all of those preaching styles and all of that. So we had a Nigerian English service, which, by the way, is very different than a Congo, a French-speaking service. They're both from Africa, but very, very different. So we had that African English, but then we had the mix of multiple cultures that would come together in an English environment, which was actually much harder because you would have a mix of people from around the world that English is their second or third language, now trying to worship together. And so, yeah, you're alluding, Kevin, to the challenge of making sure we connect, and that's really big for us. So I'm glad you're pressing in here. Because we are multicultural, even though we're in America, we're multicultural here in South Florida, and most of our congregation is what we would call third culture, right? They're Haitian by family blood, yourself, but you weren't born in Haiti, and you were born in America, but in the home, your parents probably carried a lot of Haitian traditions and values and foods and smells and language and customs and all of that. You even went to a Haitian church, right? And so Creole English was very mixed together. So you became what we would call a third culture, not truly Haitian, not truly American, but it creates a new culture. That's our church. That is our church, and therefore our communication, and thus why we write our own curriculum, is because we're pressing into something that's not the norm. If it was just Haitians, it's a little different. If we're up in the Midwest of America and they've never been out of Oklahoma, yeah, it's different. Then wow, we're made up of people from around the world. That is huge for us at CLC.
Man,
the
Pastor.
diversity. That diversity.
Thank you. We're going to add something.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
what I
man.
love about what Pastor Tom's thoughts are here is knowing your audience is a very important thing. And especially for us here at CLC, multicultural, multi-ethnic, we're also multi-generational, where in the room you'll have somebody that's in their 20s and then somebody who's over 60, right? So that's a big understanding of what the difference is there too. But not only that, when it comes to speaking to a group of people, but I also feel like at times conversationally this needs to come into play, right? So as we're on our teams or we're leading groups of people, whether large or small, no matter where we are in our church, there needs to be an understanding of who am I talking to, right? Something we try to do in our team is get a better understanding of how are we made up, maybe personality-wise. We have this DISC assessment, right? We try to help each other understand each other a little bit more. And if you're going to have the right heart, means you're going to walk into the conversation trying to understand who your audience is, meaning I want to learn you more than trying to be understood myself. So if I'm talking to a person on the red carpet team and I'm part of the red carpet team or I'm part of the kids ministry team or whatever, I want to know who I'm talking to. So I want to build a relationship with them and be able to speak to them in a way that they would want to receive it. Not just speak to with them in a way that comes from my culture, from my understanding, from my paradigm, from my perspective, because then it could come across that I know what I'm talking about and you don't. And that's not what we want to do in our environments and with our people. And let's be honest, this type of communication skill set is critical, not just for what we do in ministry, but also in our homes, what we're doing with our coworkers at work, and how can we better communicate with those around us so we have a lasting impact and they want to hear what we have to say, because when God gives us an opportunity to share the gospel with them, there's going to be a more of a desire, there's more of a willingness to listen and to hear what we have to say in that regard. And that's key by knowing the audience.
That's really good. And I think, and I know that we've drifted, but I think it's really good that we've drifted because it's really where we are as a congregation. And it requires a lot of extra grace and, just grace.
It
You
is,
know,
it
a
is
lot of
the
extra
benefit
grace.
of the doubt and
Giving the benefit of the doubt, a lot of extra patience, because one, it might be multi-generational, first of all, right? So it could be somebody in their 55 and up speaking to somebody 30 and under. There's a huge gap there, to cultural differences in people's style, language barriers. So in our church, I would tag 25, 30% of our congregation. English is really not their first language. It's a second language, maybe even a third for some. And so a large part have immigrated in. They're a part of our congregation. They are first generation, coming from Caribbean or Europe or Asia, Philippines, wherever. And so it takes a lot of extra patience in not only communication, because the way you may say it when English isn't your first language may, to a native English speaker, come out offensive. Right. But they're not meaning to be offensive. They've just learned English in that way. They learn that word in that way. Their mind, and until you try to learn another language, you don't really understand it. But if you have to go and now start speaking in Creole, and I spend 2 years trying to learn Creole, and now I start speaking, if I don't get grace, I'm going to offend them. Right. I'm going to, instead of saying one word, I'm going to say a cuss word, I remember first time I did that in Hungarian, and the audience gasped, and it's like, what did I say, and so that grace that goes there, but also grace, and this is so good, Kevin, that we remember this, grace in our relationships, as we're talking about serving in our teams. Right. Culturally, it's so much easier to connect. I mean, and we relationally connect well within our culture. Now, it could be the American culture. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking, again, skin color or race. It's the culture that we've adapted to. Yep. But when we're out of that and we're with others now relationally it's harder. Mm-hmm. And actually, it can be tiring, right? If you spend an entire evening with pick a country, Polish, I mentioned them earlier, a Polish family whose English is broken, more than likely, very few are going to do it, first of all, but it's tiring at the end of the night, but it requires so much patience, so much grace, and it requires me, this is where I'm getting to then, trying to be clear in communication, is it forces me to push in, right, to build the relationship, even though we may not have a natural language connect or ethnic connect or generational connect, that I'm pushing in because we're on a team, we're serving together, we're, of course, the family of God together. And I've said, from our team all the time, when was the last time you ate with someone from a different culture, a different race? When was the generation? We can do all of these, right? When was the last time you vacationed with someone like that? It forces you to learn how to push in and build these relationships. And we're talking about communication. And in our setting, this is very practical. Absolutely. That this hinders, it offends, and it separates. And we deal, especially you and I, deal with a lot of problem solving, right? Usually it's misunderstandings. Right. And it's fully not been communicated or understood the way, it was being intended, and therefore offense comes, and the way they spoke to me, they were harsh, they did that. And so I would say to all our volunteers, just be patient, be gracious, try to be understanding. Hey, I understood you to say this. Is that what you meant? And if they're a second English speaker, hey, in my American English understanding and upbringing, that's what that meant. Is that what you meant? And no, that's not what I meant, or whatever, And all of a sudden, it just melts away the offense that drives so many and we're talking to volunteers, we're talking to leaders, that drives many away because of the offense that's gotten there. So I know we drifted, but I really think this was exactly what our volunteers needed.
I actually like where this is going. Let's just stay right where we are right now. I mean, it goes with parenting, goes with marriage, it goes with life. It's like, I don't know if you're on a marriage podcast or whatever, but no, this is perfect because it's very, very practical. And what I would say almost hits us home, hits us right where we are at home. So I hope you're enjoying this. But no, let's stay right there. I think this is helpful because, as a Haitian American growing up, eye contact could be offensive.
Yeah.
Whereas for some people, if I'm not looking at you in your eyes, you might feel like I'm disrespecting you.
Right.
And even in the Haitian community, there's multiple types of dialects in Haiti, right? Some words that might not be offensive for some groups of Haitians might be offensive for others. I love this because the reason I want to park here is we get the opportunity to celebrate all of the diversity here at CLC, all the cultures, all the ages, all of the uniqueness, because it's what makes us different. I mean, I love trying different meals, with different families or different experiences, and even just having new moments. And I even think this, I remember when I first came to CLC and Pastor Christian and I were working together and trying to get to know Pastor Christian, because you're Puerto Rican and Colombian.
That's right.
Right? Which is, even though it's Spanish, it's still not exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
I think Colombians got the good rice, but they feel like their rice is better than pork. But
Every culture feels like they have the best
Has
rice.
the best rice.
They're trying to get me to eat in Colombia these big old ants that are dipped in chocolate or something. It's like, that ain't happening. I'm sorry, but that ain't happening.
I love you and Jesus love you.
Yeah. We won't do that. We won't do that. But yeah.
Special candy.
I think the point there, like you're saying, Pastor, which is good, that we're talking about is we, as a family, as a team, as a church, we have the opportunity to celebrate all of the different things that makes us unique for the purpose of connecting. Instead of focusing, I love when you say this, on what divides us, let's focus on what unifies us. We may not have come from the same country, we may not have been raised the same, but man, we serve the same Lord, and the blood of Jesus keeps us as the family of God so that we can make those connections.
I remember you and I, not to break your thought,
No, it's
but
okay,
I
it's
remember
okay.
you and I having some talks and conversations to say, hey, and this could be, again, 25, 30% of our congregation, hey, Kev, I've been out of America for 18 years, so triggers in America, they're not my trigger, right. And because I haven't been here, I'm not impacted by it. Right. It's not that I'm ignoring it or I believe my silence is condoning something. It's just when you're not familiar, with different cultural, traditional, ethnic, blends, we have to learn in our church to surrender what divides us. So we love and we celebrate our diversities, but we also have to surrender what we would hold on to as a diversity, and therefore would lead to division. And we've got to yield that, and therefore the statement of, the mantra of, we've got to celebrate the diversities, look for what unifies us, and walk heart and heart, mind to mind, purpose to purpose, loving one another in the mission of Christ.
Absolutely. Listen, y'all, I hope you enjoyed this conversation that we've had. This is one of my favorite ones. We had some great ones, Danielle and Pastor Candy and Pastor Stephen. Man, this is one of my favorite ones.
It was Christian. He made all the
Yeah. You brought the sauce today.
You brought it.
You brought the anointing. You brought the oil. You brought
the Colombian Puerto Rican sauce.
The sauce, the sazon. You brought the sazon.
I didn't eat breakfast this morning.
That is the joke. But listen, we hope and pray that you all really enjoy this. Thank you again for being just our volunteers and leaders that helps make connection with people that we may never reach, but together we can make an impact, not only in South Florida, but around the world. So we hope that you feel encouraged, uplifted, and equipped. See you on our next episode.